Hello everyone, it's Paul from SimCoach. Today we've got a breakdown of a LeMans lap in a LMP2. The lap was a 30.8, which was on full fuel. Weather conditions are here, so 32 degree track. I pulled this from one of the GES24 hour lobbies, so I mean, we know it's varied, but this is something around what it's likely to be at the start of the race. So yeah, I've already put up the two hot lap videos, one from cockpit view and one from external. I'll put the links in the description as well if you haven't seen them yet. I recommend you have a look through them because it's such a long lap. I'm not going to play the lap on its own now. We'll just go through kind of each corner, and if you want to see the hot lap video, then go off and have a look at those in your own time. So starting off, we go into Dunlop. So what we want to do, we want to maximise the track space on the outside. So use all of this out here. This isn't an off track, so we can use all of that track, make it as wide as possible, and then we'll start to turn in kind of, I mean, there's not really much of a marker here, but you just want to basically turn in kind of a little bit before this white line. And then as we want to cut this curb, and as we go over it, we want to start braking, and it's quite a progressive braking here. So we start off kind of 40 odd %, and then as we straighten the car out, we increase that. And you want to kind of maximize the amount of space that you're using out here. You can go a little bit further, but I kind of recommend you keeping it kind of here. You want all the tires to be on the curb. And then we're going to turn in quite late. So the key to this corner is that there is a slowdown here. It's a lot easier to get the slowdown if you turn in early, whereas if you turn in quite late, you can actually cut the corner all the way to this to the gravel, so you can go over these sausages. And what we want to do is we want to have scrubbed off enough speed so that when we hit the sausages, we can put a little bit of throttle in to just lift the nose up and settle the car. It's like a little cheat code where it really balances the car out and stops it kind of bouncing upwards from the sausages. So I'll just run that back. So as we turn in, we're trailing off the brakes, a little bit of gas over the curbs, and we almost want to sacrifice the first corner to make sure that we don't run too deep over here. You want to try and get as far over to the left as we possibly can. You see here I'm using all of the inside here. We want to try and get as far over to the left as we can. I like to downshift into first on the transition in between. Andy doesn't, so it's a personal preference. I just like the extra rotation that I get from first, but it does mean that you need to be quite careful when getting on the throttle on the second bit, because in first the rear will want to kick around quite a bit, and then again we can cut. To be honest, we can cut a little bit more of this, but again, be careful because there is a slowdown here. But you can definitely go over the sausages, and you want to make sure you've got some throttle in as you do, as for the same reason as before. Just settles the car out. And then on exit, you can actually go over this first white one, but you just can't go through the second one. So the slowdown is if you go outside of that white one, the second one rather. So I'll just play this all again from the cockpit view at full speed so you can see it. Down into second, a little bit of throttle over the curb, down into first, out we go. And then all of this should be flat down here. And we want to stay as close to these bollards as we can. And then the braking zone here, again, there's not really a reference. It's kind of maybe 25 meters after the last bollard. So here, which in relation is kind of here. So as you can see, and this is like a momentum corner. So what we want to do is brake, turn in. As we're turning in, we're trailing off again, and we want to ideally, I've kind of missed the apex here a little bit. Ideally, we want to keep the car on this curb for as long as possible, because this is another one where you don't want to be going deep over here and getting towards these bollards over here, because then you've basically ruined your the right-hander into Tetra Rouge. So we want to really stick. Ideally, I want to be kind of here. This is about the limit that I'm getting away with, but as you can see, I'm not at full throttle now because I've not kept it close enough to the inside. Really, I should be at full throttle, kind of exiting here. But yeah, again, this should all be flat. What we also really need to be aware of is that this brow of the hill makes the car go very, very light, and if you've got any sort of right-hand steering still going on, the car's going to want to snap away from you a little bit. So kind of make an effort to straighten the wheel out as we go over this. You'll see here, I'm turning, I then straighten it out over the brow, and then I can give it a little bit more steering as the car kind of squashes back down into the track again. So this should all be flat from exiting from here down into Tetra Rouge. So I'll just show you that again from the cockpit view. So stick in third, use the curbs, out we go. Now into Tetra Rouge. So there is a little bit of a trick here that you can do, which I do thoroughly recommend, is to use some of this grass on the outside to widen the corner out. So you'll see here, I'm actually over onto the grass. All this does is it just widens the corner out, so you can get a better run through it, and you can carry a bit more speed. Don't worry, it's not going to spin you, it's not going to kick the rear round or anything like that. It's pretty standard move to use that. So yeah, so basically tiny little bit bite on the brake, and that's purely just to keep the nose in. So we kind of want to cross the white line. That's where we want to go over the grass just after it, and then really chuck her in with a little bit of braking just to keep the nose in. And we can cut this inside. You can cut it a little bit more than that. That's not far off being the limit, but there is a little bit more. You can kind of go over the sausages a little bit, but we want to make sure that we're already on the gas at that point. So as soon as we've got that little bit of braking done and we know we're going to make it, straight back onto the gas. And on exit here, it doesn't matter if you go all the way over onto this blue stuff. What the key to this corner is that you have at least these tyres on this side of the curb when you exit Tetra Rouge. So by the end of that curb, you have to have wheels on this side of the curb. So you'll see here, I've done it there. There was a little bit more room for me. I could have carried a little bit more speed, but this is a safe way of doing it. But you've just got to, honestly, it doesn't matter if you're all the way over here. As long as you can get the car back over here, you won't get a slowdown by the end of that curb. So I'll just show you this again from the cockpit. Now, there are some really key things on the straights at Le Mans. Mainly, the straights are concave, so they're higher in the middle than they are on the outsides, which means you do not want to be going over the middle in an LMP2 car, because the car will bottom out and you will lose speed. So pay very close attention to where I'm putting the car while you're on the straights, because it does matter, and the crossover points matter as well. We're talking really fine margins here, but every tenth counts around Le Mans, so we've got to make the most of it. So as we exit here, we want to stay on the inside, keeping the track as short as possible, and then we cross over in this part where there is no white line. This bit is flat, whereas if you was to cross over where the white line is, the car will bottom out slightly, and the scraping will slow you down. So we want to cross over here, and we'll get over to the right, go over to the left rather, all the way down the straight. And you'll see here, I'm now at 310. So that is the limit of the standard stack, which is definitely quicker at Le Mans. The tall stack isn't good around here. And you'll notice I immediately drop down to sort of 84-85% of the throttle to keep it at that 310. It's just a technique that's worth doing, because if you bounce it off the limiter, you'll go all the way back down to, I think it's 306, and then have to go back up and then down and then up and then down. And by doing this, you also save a bit of fuel as well, so it will help you in the long run. So then coming into the chicane, first Mulsanne, what I'm looking for here is, I mean, really, there isn't really much of a braking marker here, but I'm looking at being about 25 meters before the 100 board. That is really the only real braking marker I can give you. And we want to basically line the edge of the car up to that cone. We don't want to hit that cone, but we want to be quite close to it. And we want to brake really heavily, trailing it off as we start turning in. And we want to use all of this curb on the inside. So you can put pretty much half the car over that curb. And you'll notice that I'm off the brakes once I'm bouncing over this curb, and I give it just a tiny little dab of throttle just to balance the car out as we bounce off the curb down into second. You can stay in second. You can also go down to first if you feel like you need the extra rotation. I actually think that doing this in second is probably quicker, and you get slightly better traction on the exits, but you just need to be aware that it's quite easy to understeer, so you need to really overemphasize the trail braking into this second part of the corner. So in this instance, I went down to first. We cut all of this on the inside again, and then power out, and we can use this here as well. There is a slowdown if you go too far over this, and you don't really want to be going sort of mega over this curb because it will bottom the car out. So always try and make sure you've got at least a couple of wheels on the tarmac, and you'll be fine. So I'll just play this again from the cockpit view. You'll hear there that I bounced it off the rev limiter. That is the danger of doing it in first, because you're so high up in the gear at that point. So yeah, there is a lot to be said about keeping it in second through there. And then the second part of the Mulsanne straight, we want to keep it on the left all the way down, and you'll notice that there's two hills. So you want to ideally, I prefer crossing over at this point, and you want to wait until you're on the downhill, so here, and then we cross over. The reason for that is that basically by going diagonally down the downhill, you're actually increasing the time that you're going downhill. Again, very, very small margins, but they do make a hell of a difference around here. I think on this instance I actually went a bit too late, but we won't talk about that. And then for the second Mulsanne chicane, I'm looking for the 100 meter board. So just before it, or just kind of as it feels like I'm about to cross it, that is my braking point. And again, we're aiming for this this cone rather. Braking in a straight line, lots of brake pedal. I'm almost at 100%. And then as we start turning in, that's when we're going to start trailing it off. Again, I use a lot of this curb on the inside here. But then as I fall off the curb, I get off the brake and let the car kind of coast. And then just a little bit of trail braking in to the second bit, using all the curb on the inside. And again, you can do this in first or second. I actually now prefer doing it in second rather than first, as you can just carry a little bit more momentum. But again, try it out yourself, see how you get on. On the exit, you can cut quite a lot of this. Again, you've got to be a little bit careful because there is a slowdown here. But as long as you kind of keep two wheels over on the tarmac, you should be absolutely fine. So I'll just show you this again from outside. So over that curb, off the brakes, back on them again, and then out we go. And now here we want to stay on the right hand side of the track, and then we cross over as the track straightens out, and we want to be on the left, over onto close to the white line. Going into Arnage. No, not Arnage, Mulsanne corner, I should say. God, this is going well. It's been a while, guys. Bear with me. So at this point, we want to be quite close to this cone, and the cone is the turning point. So we turn in. There's no need to go anywhere near this curb, but what we want to aim to do is basically line the car up so that we are pointing at that cone. We want the middle of the car to be aiming directly at that cone. Your braking point is kind of pretty much kind of like just a little bit after where the curb starts. So as the curb disappears from the car, you can then start braking. So you'll notice here that I'm doing my little bit of steering to get the car pointed at that cone, but then I straighten up the steering so I can use. So now I know that I'm pointing to that cone, I can use pretty much 90% of the brake pedal because I'm braking in a straight line. Very, very, very important that we keep the steering wheel as straight as possible here, because any sort of turning right at this point, while having that much braking input in, the chances are you're probably going to lock up. So yeah, point to the cone, full brakes, and then just after we pass this cone is when we want to turn in. We want to go all the way down to first gear, and we want to cut as much of this curb as we possibly can. So you'll see here the limit. There is a pretty heavy slowdown here if you go through these bollards. So you want to be as close to that as you possibly can be. And you'll notice that because again, this is another one of those where LeMans is massive on exits. The key thing to being fast around LeMans is making sure that your exits are correct, because the straights are so long that by going too deep into this corner and getting a bad exit means that you're suffering for about 2 miles all the way down the next straight down towards Indy. So it's really, really key that you scrub off enough speed here. So my minimum speed here is 100k or 99k. That's what you're aiming for, and this gives you the ability then. So once you've turned in and you know you've got to that bollard on the inside, I'm already on the throttle here. So this is going to give me such a good exit, because if I've gone deep, I'm not going to be able to get onto the throttle until I'm all the way over here, right? Because I'm so worried about going wide. So by doing this, I'm just giving myself the best exit possible. And we use the S technique again. So we kind of get up to sort of 50-60% of the throttle to get a move in. And then as we straighten the steering out, we'll go full throttle after that. So I'll just show that again. There we go, and we can use all of this on the outside here. This isn't an off track. You can even get away with dipping a little bit of tyre onto the gravel, but that's not quick, so we don't recommend you do that, but I'm just letting you know where the limits are. So I will show this again now from cockpit view. And then for this next straight, we want to get over to the right as quickly as possible, and we want to stay close to the right hand side of the track all the way down here, because if you notice, this part of the hill is taller than this part, so you're spending more time going up a higher gradient on that side of the track. So we want to be on this side because you're obviously not going uphill for as long. So then stay on the right, stay on the right, stay on the right. And then we'll cross over just over the brow of the hill. This is another point where you're going to hit the limiter. So you can go down to sort of 80-85% here. It's not as crucial because it can get a bit, everything can get a bit kind of hectic here. So you're only really going to bounce off the limiter once. So there's not a massive amount of loss if you just want to keep your foot in. It's absolutely no problem. And then coming into Indy, we want to place the car over. You can kind of go halfway into the AstroTurf without it being an off track. And then as we're getting towards the end of it, I basically coast the car in at this point. So I'm off the throttle, off the brakes, and then I hit this curb. And as I'm coming off the curb, that's when I'll start braking. And while I'm on the curb and turning, I'm only sort of going to sort of 50 odd % brake. And then as I straighten the car out, to like as the track straightens out, that's when I'll squeeze fully onto sort of 90-95% of the brake. So I'll just show you that. We want to be on the right hand side of the track, all the way down to second, and in she goes. So there's two different ways of taking this corner. One is that we use the camber of the track and don't, I mean, I've not done it correctly here, but just take my word for it. You either want to use none of the curb, or you want to cut the curb completely. That you don't really want to be doing what I've done here and put the car here, because you'll notice straight away that the left-hand side of the car is lifted up, which means that we're now fighting against the camber rather than using it. Ideally, if you're going to take this line, you want to have your left tyres on this flat bit, and you can cut this corner quite heavily. But if you want to use the camber of the track, you want to basically keep your inside wheel kind of following the edge of the curb, so that you take advantage of the maximum camber. Really patient on exit, because it is very easy to kick the rear out here. So again, look at the throttle trace. We go up to sort of 60% and then squeeze the last bit in as we straighten up the steering again. So I'll just show you this from outside. And then going into our nudge. So that, again, there's two different ways of doing this. Braking marker wise, again, there isn't really one, but you're looking at about 75 meters is where you want to be aiming for. So we're looking at about here. There's two different ways of taking this. You either line your left wheels up so that they just kind of nibble this curb, or you can take the line that I take and you go over towards this cone over here. There are risks involved in taking the line that I take. If you get the line slightly wrong, the car will kind of canoe down the curb, because the bottom of the car will basically get caught on the curb itself. But I prefer it because it does open the track up more, so it kind of widens your entry, and makes the corner less tight, essentially. But this is another one of those corners where it's much better to scrub off more speed on entry and make sure that you can get on the gas really early on exit, because again, there's a massive long straight towards Porsche curves, so going deep here is a disaster, really. You really want to be scrubbing as much speed off as you can, going into the corner, so you can get on the gas as early as possible. So you'll see here, and you can use all of this on the exit. So I'll show you this from the outside. Essentially braking at the sort of 75, and then I put the car over it and then turn in towards the end of it, and I'm trail braking all the way into the curve, and then I'm already getting onto the throttle here because I've scrubbed off enough speed, which is going to give me the perfect exit. If you don't scrub off enough speed, the chances are you're not going to be able to get onto the throttle until about here, which you're already screwed compared to someone that's put this much throttle in already. So just show you this properly from the outside. There we go. So now getting into the really technical part of the track, which is Porsche curves and karting and full chicanes. So we want to keep the car on the left hand side, and then let me just go into cockpit. So we want to use the AstroTurf. You can use about half of it, and what I do is I will start trail braking as I kind of hit the AstroTurf, and it's just a small trail brake down to fourth, and we want to be aiming to get the left hand wheel onto this curb, and we've got to be really patient with our throttle, because the last thing we want to do is go over here onto this blue stuff. We want to make sure that we've given ourselves the ability to get back over to the right hand side of the track, because from this point all of this should be flat. So I'll just show you this again from the outside. So we trail brake at the Astro, get it over that curb. I've actually missed the apex a little bit there. You want to be basically following that curb round, right? So onto the curb, squeeze the throttle in, get it back over to the right, up to fifth, over that curb, and then we want to aim for basically cutting this bit of grass here. This will make the car bounce a little bit, but it's necessary, and we do a little bit of a lift as we turn it in. So flat all the way through here, line the car up, get over that, You see that little bounce, but it's just a little lift of the throttle, just to stop it from understeering over towards this wall. And then we brake. No real, again, there's no real marker here. This is all about timing, but it's brake down into third, and we want to keep the car as close to this white line as we possibly can. So this is all about throttle control through here. We don't want to let the car run wide. We've got to be really, really, really patient here. Look at the throttle application. Go back up to fourth. It's hugging this white line completely, keeping it there the whole time. Lift as we chuck it into the left. Cut the curb on the inside. You can cut that a little bit more than what I've done there. You can actually go over the sausage a little bit, but key is stay on that white line. Little lift to get the car turned in, and again we can use all of this on the exit. You just got to make sure that you're back off the like you've got these two wheels back over here by the time you get to the end of it. So that's the limit. Otherwise you'll get a slowdown there. So I'll just show you this whole section again from the cockpit, and then I'll show it from the outside. So brake on the Astro, keep it as tight as we can here. Full gas up to fifth. Little lift over the curb. Brake third gear onto the white. Back up to fourth. Little lift to chuck her into the left, and out we go. And then this should all be flat. And now going into the last chicanes, what I like to do here is rather than braking in a straight along this white line, I'll actually use some of the pit lane. So I'm bringing the car over here, which then gives me the ability to basically brake in a straight line this way. So I'm just reducing the amount of braking and turning that I'm having to do at the same time. So I will start braking just before the kind of solid white lines here. So maybe like this last square of white, and you see very little steering input, because by giving myself this angle instead of kind of running the car down this white line, I'm already kind of halfway towards this curb, right? So big braking, we can cut a lot of this. You see there that I've literally my wheels are going through that white one. So big heavy braking, off the brakes, back on them again as we go that way. Again, you can cut quite a lot of that. Little bit of throttle just as we go into the transition, but it's only a very small amount just to get the car back over here. If you put in more and you end up over here, you've basically sacrificed your entry into this bit. And then big jump over this curb with some throttle in to bring the nose up as we hit the curb. And then big jump over this one as well. Neither of these were slowdowns, so you can get a lot of that sausage there on the inside. And you'll notice I've got throttle in as I hit both of those curbs just to bring the nose up. And out we go. So I'll show you this all again from the cockpit. So over into the pit lane, brake at the split, over that one, down to second, down to first. Little bit of throttle as we hit both of those curbs, and out we go. And that is your lap of Le Mans. As always, guys, any questions, please let me know. I'm always in the Discord. You can drop me a DM if you like. But yeah, best of luck for the 24 hours in a couple of weeks. And yeah, let's go. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.